Today, I'm going to do something completely insane. I'm going to simulate what it would actually feel like to raise Bloop as a pet. And I don't mean just keeping some weird blob in a fish tank for a week. No, I'm talking about starting with a tiny baby Bloop that fits in the palm of my hand and raising him all the way until he becomes that massive, nightmare-inducing deep-sea monster everyone talks about. Right now, this is baby Bloop. And honestly, he looks ridiculous. He's small enough to hold, but he already gives off serious something's not right energy. That signature giant circular mouth is already there, lined with tiny razor-sharp needle teeth. His body is pale and squishy, almost translucent, with these weird little fins that make him look like a rejected deep-sea experiment. He's equal parts adorable and straight-up unsettling. Even at this size, you can tell he wasn't built like normal sea creatures. He mostly just floats there, like a lazy ghost, barely moving. But the second anything twitches in the water, his whole focus locks on. That massive mouth stays half open, ready. I'm not gonna lie, I don't fully trust this little guy. If he really grows the way legends say he does, then this tiny deep-sea gremlin is destined to become a living vacuum cleaner with teeth, a predator that can swallow half the ocean without even trying. So before things get crazy, I need to figure out 3 important things fast. First, what kind of tank does a baby Bloop even need? Second, what the hell does something with a mouth like that eat when it's still tiny? And third, how ridiculously fast is this thing going to grow before it stops being a pet and starts becoming a problem? I started by building him the best possible home I could. A chilled saltwater tank with heavy filtration and 0 light pollution, trying to mimic the deep ocean. The moment I dropped him in, he began acting strange. Instead of swimming around like a normal fish, baby Bloop just drifted silently, like a pale little phantom, slowly rotating and tracking every single movement, including my fingers near the glass. At first, I thought it was kind of cute, like he was bonding with me. Then I gave him his first proper meal. I dropped in some live plankton and tiny micro shrimp. What happened next was wild. He didn't chase anything. He stayed almost perfectly still, waited for the food to drift close, and then, boom! That tiny mouth exploded open into a perfect black hole and sucked everything in like a living vacuum. The darker I made the tank, the more aggressive his feeding became. And every single time he ate, I could hear this faint, low, vibrating pulse coming from deep inside him. At first, it sounded almost soothing, but the more I watched, the more it felt like I wasn't feeding a baby. I was watching a predator rehearse for the big leagues.
1 month later, everything had already gone wrong. Baby Bloop had quadrupled in size. He was way too big, way too powerful, and way too hungry for that tank. The glass was starting to stress, and I knew I had to move him immediately. So I upgraded him to the biggest setup I could manage on short notice, an entire swimming pool filled with cold salt water. Seeing him in that pool for the first time was absolutely insane. Just weeks earlier, he fit in my hands. Now he was gliding through the water like he owned the entire thing. His body had thickened up, those weird folds along his sides were deeper, and that monstrous mouth looked even more terrifying now that the rest of him had caught up. But the real nightmare was the food bill. He wasn't interested in tiny shrimp anymore. Now he wanted whole fish, massive chunks of tuna, swordfish slabs, and even small sharks. The amount he was eating was ridiculous. At one point, it felt less like feeding a pet and more like running a seafood warehouse. I actually needed equipment just to haul the food in. Every feeding session turned intense. The moment food hit the water, calm Bloop disappeared. He would lock onto his target, open that enormous circular mouth, and create this powerful suction that pulled everything straight in. No chasing, no thrashing, just pure, terrifying efficiency.
That's when it really hit me. I wasn't raising a quirky pet anymore. I was trying to contain something that was biologically designed to outgrow every boundary I set. The pool was just buying me time. Eventually, I had no choice. If I waited any longer, moving him would become impossible. So with cranes, heavy-duty straps, industrial lifts, and more machinery than anyone should ever need for something that started as a hand-sized baby, we transported Bloop one final time. And then I did what I always knew was coming. I released him into the open ocean. The second he hit the deep water, any sense of control vanished. No more tanks, no more pools, no more feeding schedules. The ocean was now his playground. And grow, he did.
At full adult size, Bloop had become an absolute monster. From above, his scale was hard to even process. That pale, ghostly body stretched through the water like a living catastrophe waiting to happen. His giant circular mouth was now big enough to swallow prey that would have looked massive next to the tiny version I once held. I took a helicopter up to track him from the sky. And what I saw was straight up unbelievable. Bloop wasn't just surviving out there, he was ruling. He was vacuuming up entire schools of fish, taking down large marine animals, and moving through the water with zero effort. Boats that wandered into his zone would suddenly see the ocean around them go dead quiet before that deep, powerful Bloop pulse started shaking everything. That low, vibrating sound I first heard in the tank, it had become a force that cleared the water before he even appeared. Looking back at the whole journey, it's actually crazy. When he was small, it felt weird but doable. I kept thinking if I just upgraded the tank, upgraded the food, upgraded the setup, I could stay ahead. But I never could. Every solution only worked until Bloop outgrew it. Now that same little creature I started with is out there somewhere in the deep ocean, completely free, eating whatever he wants, growing as big as he wants, and becoming exactly what he was always meant to be, a deep-sea legend. It was one wild ride watching it all happen. If you enjoyed this sea monster simulation, make sure to subscribe because I've got more crazy what-if pet experiments coming. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.